Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and let's talk about how to play Dice Throne. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm glad you found us. I'm going to be making some Dice Throne content from now on, so if you're interested, stick around. And if you are from the channel for a while, then hey, welcome to some new fresh Dice Throne content. Now today when I'm talking about how to play Dice Throne, I am specifically talking in a 1v1 setting, scenario, whatever you want to call it. There are alternate game modes such as free-for-alls where you can go upwards of 6 players. There's team-based versions where you can do 2v2s and things like that. And those have some slightly weird niche rules that we're not going to worry about. We're specifically talking the 1v1 version of Dice Throne. One other thing I want to mention is, if you can't tell, this is on Tabletop Simulator, which for those of you that don't know is basically a game that you can get on Steam that has so many board games, almost any board game you ever want to play. So if you're a big board game person, highly recommend trying to use it. Obviously, Dice Throne is a physical game where you can have the physical pieces, but nothing is going to change in terms of rules or setups. This is just purely because it makes it a lot easier for me to show you all the moving pieces and everything you're going to need, where it's nice to have set up and things of that nature. So you've gotten Dice Throne. Now, more than likely, if you have a physical version of Dice Throne, you're going to have one of two things. That's either going to be one of the 2 character packs, which, as it sounds like, comes with 2 characters, which you can play with, or there are battle chests, and these battle chests basically come with 8 characters, and these are the characters of whatever season you choose to get. Currently, there are 3 different iterations of the battle chests, being Season 1, Season 2, and the Marvel characters. Yes, they do have a Marvel collab if you are a Marvel head. The next one to come out, and it's actually coming very soon, is going to be the X-Men characters, so that's very exciting, but we won't get into that right now. But let's say you're opening up your character, what are you going to see for the first time? For the first time, you are going to see a couple of things. One, you're going to have your character's leaflet. Now, this character's leaflet has 2 sides. This side is actually the side I recommend looking at first, because this is going to give you any frequently asked questions. If you're a, bio kind of person and you like getting into the role-playing aspect and kind of feeling like the character, it gives you that, and it gives you a basic difficulty rating. On the other side, it's going to tell you what all of your status effects do, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and it's going to tell you each side of your die, which is nice to know. We'll, kind of get into the reasoning later. Some of you, astute learners can probably guess. You're going to get 5 dice for your character. You're going to get a health dial and a combat point tracker, both to track the respective things. You're going to have your player board, which is going to have all of your different abilities, sometimes passives, such as this purple one right here, and then sometimes your defense rolls, such as this one right here, and then your ultimate. Those are all your abilities. And then you will have your deck of cards. Now, it's not always going to be the same amount for each character, so don't freak out if you're looking at a character other than Gunslinger and you don't have 33 cards. That's okay. There's a couple reasons why that might be the case. Now, as for what you see in your character stuff, I highly recommend setting it up in a similar vein to this, and if you have the physical version, you're going to have a bunch of little tokens that you're going to want to put. I recommend just stacking them next to whatever the thing is, because that makes it easy to remember what they are and you know where to grab them and all that good stuff. You're going to want to set your health dial to 50, you're going to want to set your combat points to 2, and then you're going to want to shuffle up your deck, draw 4 cards, and you're pretty much ready to go. Now, both players have everything set up. What you're going to do is you're going to roll your die, you see what you get, and whoever gets the higher number is going to get to choose who goes first in this game. Now, the main thing to note here is that if you go first, on your first turn, you must skip the income phase, which we're going to talk about this turn order here in a second once we actually start our first turn. But again, just keep in mind, you lose your income phase on your first turn if you are the first player of the game. So let's say you have won the dice roll and you're choosing to go first. Well, let's go ahead and talk about our turn order. It's broken up into 8 total phases, being upkeep phase, income phase, main phase 1, offensive roll phase. Targeting phase doesn't really exist for us because we're talking about 1v1 rules, but just know it does technically exist in more than 2-player games. You have a defensive roll phase, a main phase, and your discard phase. Now, I know that sounded like a lot, but let's break it down. Upkeep phase, resolve applicable status effects. In this case, it's the first turn, so we have no status effects, but we do have a passive, which is this little purple thing down here. Now again, not every character is going to have a passive, all right? That's important to keep in mind. They don't all have this, but in this case, Gunslinger does, and we do not skip upkeep as the first player. So in this case, we will get to gain a reload. So we take our reload status effect, place it on our board. We've now gained our reload during our upkeep. Now don't forget, as I talked about earlier, since we are going first in this scenario, we skip income phase. However, just for future note, on every other turn you take, or if you are the second player, you are going to gain a CP and draw one card. Again, we're not going to do that because we're first player, so we will just skip to main phase 1. Main phase 1 means we can play any ability upgrades, main phase action cards, or we can sell cards to gain CP. So at the start of our turn, since it's main phase 1, we can now play any main phase card. Now there are specific colors of cards that are going to help guide you to tell you what you can and can't play, which is very helpful. Things like red cards can be played at any point, and I mean any point. That includes your opponent's turn. Orange cards can only be played during the orange phases, which are the roll phases. So easy way to remember, something like a chosen player may perform a reroll of up to 5 dice during their offensive roll phase. You can play it during that. Blue cards can only be played during your main phase, which is why they're colored blue. Makes it easy to remember. And lastly, we have upgrade cards. Now, upgrade cards come in white for your main ability upgrades. They come in green for your defensive upgrades. And then they also sometimes come in purple if your passive has an upgrade. The way these are played is very, very simple. Now, what I'm gonna do here is basically go through what I would, deem a normal turn. So taking our turn 1, I'm gonna go ahead and play double up for 1 CP. As you can see in that top left corner of the card, it says 1 CP, that's how much it costs. Pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna pay 1, gonna draw 2 cards. Easy so far. We drew into, wow, conveniently every single color card that you will see. Ha. It wasn't set up, I swear. Now, getting into what we might do next, maybe we're gonna play Vegas Baby, because again, it's our main phase, so we can play blue cards. We roll a die and gain half the value rounded up as CP. Great. Roll a die, we get a 5, perfect. So we're gonna get 3 CP because it's half rounded up. Now, let's see, we have some good cards. I really wanna upgrade my small straight here. So what I'm gonna do, put the small straight on top of what was my original small straight and spin the 3. Now what's really cool, and I can show y'all very directly, is if you look at the small straight in the top right corner, it's after targeting an opponent, you each roll a die. If your roll is equal or greater, you deal 7, otherwise deal 5. You don't have to memorize these, they stay in front of you, so it's really nice. When I put that upgrade on top of it, it just covers it up. And now it's dealing more damage. Not only that, but I win ties on the dice roll. So it just makes abilities better whenever you upgrade them. So we've completed our main phase 1. We're now going to go ahead and move into our offensive roll phase. Moving into offensive roll phase, again, very simple. If you've ever played Yahtzee, then you're gonna be right at home. You're gonna understand how this works very easily. You're gonna start by rolling your dice, and let's see what we get. We get a 4, 2, 6, 6, 3. Now there's a few things we can look for. 1, we can look at our abilities and try to match symbols. So a perfect example here is Bounty Hunter, which is going to be 2 of those bullet symbols and then 2 of those bullseye symbols. I managed to get that with my 2, 3, 6, 6. So if I wanted to, I could stop rolling and go ahead and say that I'm going to do the Bounty Hunter ability. Now, maybe instead you want to use that small straight that you just upgraded. Well, in that case, what you can do is, like I mentioned Yahtzee before, we can keep this 2, 3, 4, because we need a small straight, which is just 4 dice in a row, and roll these 2 dice. And this time we got a 1 and a 4, which is perfect, exactly what we wanted. So we can put that 1 there, 4 to the side. Now you do get 3 rolls, just like Yahtzee, but if you're looking for a small straight, you're allowed to stop early. So for this example, we're gonna stop at 2, even though we have another roll, and go ahead and declare that we're doing Showdown 3 here, which is our small straight. As we've talked about before, there are some, roll phase cards where the opponent is gonna have a chance to mess with you and sometimes force you to change these dice. So keep that in mind whenever you're playing. But if we have successfully declared this, we're gonna go ahead and roll. So let's say I roll this die, I get a 1, and my opponent rolls this die, and they get a 5. Unfortunately, they win the die roll, so I'm only going to be dealing 6 damage. Now what's gonna happen is, like we talked about, we're skipping targeting roll phase, because there's only one person, you don't need to choose another target, and go straight to defensive roll phase, where now that the opponent knows that we're dealing 6 damage, they get a chance to do their defensive roll. Now, we're just gonna pretend for the sake of convenience here that you are playing against another gunslinger. So what I would do if I was being attacked is I'm gonna go ahead and look at my board and look at my defense roll and do what it says. Gunslingers is a little unique in that you actually interact with your opponent and you both roll a die to see what happens. Typically, for almost all defenses, you're just gonna roll however many dice it tells you to roll and you'll get things based off the symbol. But following the Gunslinger's defense roll here, we're both gonna roll a die. If it's greater, I can choose to deal 3 damage back, which is awesome, or block half of it. Now, if I'm not greater, in this case, I will only deal 1 back. So we roll, this is my dice roll. I got a 5, my opponent is gonna roll, and they get a 3, so we win. And in this case, I'm gonna choose to block half of the damage rounded up. Now, in this case, if I was getting attacked, I'm gonna go ahead and, take my 3 damage. And now, in most cases, you're pretty much good to move on to your next step. Gunslinger, however, is a little unique, and this is where we're gonna talk about status effects. It's always good to keep track of the status effects on your board, because in Gunslinger's case, I have Reload, which if you read, whenever I conclude an offensive roll phase, I can spin this token and deal half of whatever I roll as additional damage. So I spend my Reload by just removing it from my board, roll a die. Now, unfortunately, I only rolled a 1, so I'm only going to be dealing 1 damage back, but that's going to be 1 more point of damage. So if I was the defender, I would have to add 1 more point of damage to that amount I received. Now, we're pretty much coming up on the end here of our turn. We're going to go to main phase 2, which is a exact copy of main phase 1. Unfortunately, I only have 1 money, but I really want to get this passive down. So what I can choose to do is, I don't really care about my defense upgrade. So I'm going to sell it, add a CP, and then I can play this for 2 CP. And just like that, you sold and played more cards. And then after main phase 2, you go to the discard phase, which is basically just making sure you are not over your hand limit, which is 6. If you ever have 7 or more cards, then you must at that point sell back down to 6. You don't, discard them and just lose them. You do sell them so you get that 1 CP for them. And a clarifying question that I get from a lot of new players, when you sell the card, you only ever get 1 CP. It doesn't matter if it's 1 CP cost or if it's a 3 CP cost, selling the card only gives you 1. And there you have it. You just looked at an entire full turn of Dice Throne. Now, while that may seem like a lot, again, you just go in order by turn and they're all broken down very simply and very easily. The hardest part about the game, and this is maybe kind of a bit of a tip for newer players, is gonna be the status effects. Anytime you play against a new character you haven't played against, they may have a status effect you haven't seen before. So my recommendation is before a game starts, just learn what the status effects tokens do for each player, because that'll give you an idea of what they do. Some players are also going to be a lot easier than others are going to be to understand and to play. Gunslinger, as an example, isn't too complicated. You gain a reload, you do an ability, you spin the reload, and your turn's pretty much done, every now and then inflicting some status effects along the way. So there it is. I hope you all enjoyed my How to Play Dice Throne. All right, it's a very simple game. I highly recommend it to just about anyone that even kind of likes board games, okay? It's a very fun time. But I'm going to be making a lot more Dice Throne content, so if you like what you see, subscribe down below. A lot of the future stuff's going to get a lot more in-depth on character analysis, certain matchups, maybe some meta talk, talking about the new X-Men come out and all those good things. So if you want to see more of that, let me know down in the comments if there's anything specific. And hey, I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.